Many people think you have to have a lot of money to launch a coffee business. However, if you have the passion and the willingness to bootstrap your venture, you can get started even if your budget is small. In this video, I'll continue the How to Launch a Coffee Biz series with an explanation of what bootstrapping means and how to use it to caffeinate your dream. Let's get into it. Step number 4 is bootstrapping. And this is really a principle that applies to all of the process as you're getting a business started. You want to go minimal. Do things in the smallest, simplest, cheapest way possible. So anything that doesn't adversely affect your customer experience, look for ways to reduce the cost. Whether that's borrowing and renting equipment, maybe it's filling in the gaps with free services, maybe delivery or ordering or invoice is done manually while you get the process figured out. Approach a mentality of what some call half-baked perfectionist. So you want the product to have a perfect look and feel to it from a customer perspective, but it may be some of the things you're doing behind the scenes are not as perfect as long as they don't create a bad effect. You want to create sweat equity everywhere you can. There may be things you could hire others to do, but the more you can do yourself early on, that's money that you save that you can use later when you can have more effect and impact of those investments. Another great way to bootstrap is to do a pop-up tour. Farmers markets, events, fairs, temporary locations. These are great ways to test taking your product to the market and getting real feedback. If you can go to an event and set up a table where the kinds of customers you want to engage with are present and be able to even make some early sales without having to spend a lot of time or money early on in your process. Along the way, you want to be building a mailing list. This can be a great way to make sure your marketing efforts are fruitful later because everyone you interact with, if you have the opportunity to get their information and continue to have contact with them, that's going to mean less effort in actually finding prospective customers. Here's a great bootstrapping example. If you had a fully funded location where you had lots of capital to work with, you might find a great location, sign a long-term lease, do an expensive build-out, buy high-quality espresso machines and automatic drip coffee makers, heavy-duty coffee grinders, a POS system, a thoughtfully and well-designed website and social media presence, supplies, water, milk, water purifier, toasters, ovens, all these different things that you would do if you had a lot of capital to work with. But what if you were going to bootstrap this business? Instead of a location, you might start with a card table at a local farmer's market. You might use an inexpensive AeroPress to give an espresso-like drink its quality without having to have an expensive espresso maker. You might use traditional coffee makers and grinders initially. Instead of expensive software and POS systems, you might use things like Google Sheets and Google Docs. You might also use landing pages that use free templates like card.co or even just use social media for engagement. You might use lower cost supplies that still have a good quality look to them. And you might use a cooler with ice rather than a refrigeration or a small hot plate instead of a stove. So these are just some examples of the ways you might bootstrap as you're starting a business. Even if you ultimately want to go to a full coffee shop, you might start with some of these things to start to build your audience and perfect your product before you have to make that heavy investment in equipment and locations.